Robert Bouchard here. Welcome to another episode of Most Cowbell. I guess you can tell today's episode is going to be about me and my drums. You've heard of more cowbell. Well, this is MoCoS2E10. I first became aware of the drums when I was 3 years old. It was the Memorial Day parade in the village of Clayton, and the high school band came down the street playing their drums. And I saw them and I was very interested in what they were doing. They went to the War Memorial, which was down the street. There was a war memorial for the people from the town who had been killed in various wars, and their names were up there. And they assembled around the statue and they played the Star Spangled Banner. That part of it where it went, I couldn't see the drummers moving their hand. It looked like they were just standing there going bzzz, and I thought, that is magic. And I still think so. So I begged my parents for a drum, and I was only 3 years old, but they decided, well, the hammer thing didn't work out. We'll give him a drum and he'll be happy. So they gave me a drum. And I didn't have it for very long, maybe a month or so. So one early morning day, probably 5 o'clock in the morning or 4:30, something like that, my mother is lying in bed and she hears me playing the drum, except it's very, very quiet. And she's like, oh, that little stinker. He's trying to play the drum and not wake Grandma up. Because her mother-in-law, she knew that she would criticize if she got woken up by me playing the drum. So she went into my bedroom to tell me to stop playing. But I was not there. All that was left was a wet diaper on the floor. She looked out the window and she saw me walking down the street playing my drum with not a stitch of clothing on. I was naked. I was the naked drummer. It was my first naked drum episode, and it was walking down the middle of the street in Clayton, New York. Needless to say, they took the drum away. For many years, I was not allowed to play a drum again. But by the time I was 11, I'd played piano for a few years, and I'd taken the lessons. And finally, I convinced them to let me play the drums again. I swore I wouldn't play with my clothes off ever again. And up until a couple weeks ago, I kept true to that. But my parents are no longer with us, so I don't know. I'm sure my mother would be mortified to see me doing that, but that's how it goes. I'm old now, so what? So, the first drum solo, or the first drum part that I heard that made me want to be in a rock and roll band was a song by a group called The Ventures called Walk Don't Run. It was an instrumental hit back in the early 60s, maybe 1960. I think it actually started in 58, 59. But anyway, the guy that created this part was not actually a guy in The Ventures. He was a friend of Noki Edwards who helped them out with their track, and he created this amazing intro. His name was Skip Moore, and he skipped out of being in The Ventures for $25 cash delivery, which was probably a good, back in 1958. it was probably good money. But anyway, the intro goes like this. It requires you to play what they call a rim shot, which is where you hit the rim with the drum head. It's a sound like that. So this intro sounded like this. So that was what made me want to, I know it's very simple, but it's a great kind of an acceleration kind of a vibe to it. And I played very early in my career. I think this was the first beat I ever played. It went something like, I would play it on the snare drum when I got my hands on a snare drum when I was 11 years old. It was something like this. And that was kind of like the drum part in Swing, 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 the Benny Goodman song with Gene Krupa playing, and it was kind of like like that. And then he would play a solo like a. Plays at the end of the song. So great tune. If you've never heard it and you're a drummer, go check out Carnegie Hall version is probably the best recorded version. Swing, Swing, Swing with Gene Krupa. Another song was a drummer called Chick Webb, who he had his own band and he discovered Ella Fitzgerald, but he would play a drum solo that was extremely fast and set that bar for Gene Krupa to follow. So Harlem Congo was a song recorded in 1938, and that one sounded like this. So I remember when I was a kid playing the drums, and I was talking to another drummer, older guy, and he said, to play the drums, you got to be crazy. He said, you got to be zany and put all of these crazy stuff. This guy had a wood block and a whole bunch of cowbells and everything all over his place. So he was certainly a zany drummer. I remember he had a funny looking kit. In high school, a little bit later, during the surf craze, I guess that'd be 1962, 63, there was a band called the Safaris, and they had a song called Wipeout. And that was kind of a rite of passage. If you were a drummer, every drummer had to play this drum solo. And it went basically like this. And of course, the thing was to try and play it as fast as you could possibly play it, and that meant you were a good drummer. Hope you enjoyed my little taste of drumming, and if you like it, comment below. If you want to see more of this kind of stuff, you have something you want to see me play, parts to one of my songs that you're trying to figure out, just let me know. And like I say, till next time, have a good week. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you soon. Bye.